Hey guys, it's Tom here. Obviously, this is Cody. So you will see a lot of Cody in the weeks and months to come. He is my best friend. Definitely keeps me going. We do a lot of running together, actually. So, anyways, what I thought I'd do, I want to like kind of level set everybody. Um, and one of the mistakes I made last summer was assume a certain amount of knowledge, which there was no reason I should have. Get this one closer. Um, but anyways, sorry. Um, but what I definitely one of the course correction I want to make was like to start from the very beginning and try and build common vocabulary. In the finance world in general, in the business world in general. I'm sorry if he's making too much noise. But in the search fund ecosystem in particular. So I thought I'd start today with just a very quick kind of primer on the search fund world, a couple general things, and I'm recording it so you can watch it, rewatch it at any speed. Nothing required here. Like this is just for your edification if you feel like watching this. But anyways, and I'm sorry if any of this is repetitive for anyone who came to my search fund talk in the fall. But to start with, the search fund idea was originated at Stanford Business School by a guy named Irv Grousbeck, I believe in the early 1990s. Irv Grousbeck's a pretty interesting guy. He's like the only person I know who has made $1 billion 3 times over in 3 different deals. Originally, he was a partner of Amos Hostetler in Continental Cablevision, which is headquartered here in Boston, which was sold twice, or 3 times actually, but the first time for 10 billion, and then was swallowed up. And I think it's part of Time Warner now. I'm not even sure, but anyhow, that was his first deal. Second deal was one of the very first search fund deals, a company now called Assurion, which you can look up. And the third is that he was the silent partner. His son was kind of the front man for the Boston Celtics, where he just sold the company, I think, in the last 6 months and made 5 billion or something. I don't remember. Anyhow, so he had this idea of instead of starting companies from scratch, enabling young, smart, talented potential CEOs who'd never been CEOs before to go out in the world and look for basically unbreakable businesses that they could buy cheap, install professional management, run for a period of time, and then sell at a profit. Like that's basically the idea. And so he did that with his students in Stanford Business School in the 90s. And the ecosystem originally was just Irv and a small handful of people, one of whom was one of his students, Will Thorndike, who's a really good friend of mine, investing in these search funds. And for a very long time, it was kind of like just a small little family club, basically, of individuals. But over a period, Stanford got more serious about it. They started publishing a study of the returns that were generated, and it was very attractive. The returns were great, which attracted more investors. And over time, it's become much more institutional. There's still a lot of individuals who are investors, but there's also funds that have been raised, probably 10 at least, but 3 or 4 really big ones, the biggest of which is Pacific Lake here in Boston, who has in different asset classes probably $1 billion. So now the current landscape is there's still a ton of individual and family office investors, but there's also increasingly institutional money who are investing in the search fund ecosystem as it's kind of grown and blossomed, and the returns have been extraordinary for everyone involved. Like the returns, if you should go look up the Stanford study, but also they have like what they call the Stanford the Stanford Business School primer on search funds, which you should definitely look up as well. It gives kind of all the basic terms. But the returns have been on the order of 35% IRR over a sustained period of time, which obviously is much better than the stock market. So in terms of the actual structure of a search fund, so that's what I really want to walk you through. So the way it works is, let's just say that our searcher is at one of the top business schools, so Harvard, Stanford, Yale, whatever. And they go out to investors and they say, okay, well, I want to raise a certain amount of money to support my effort to go look for a company. And that's called the search phase. And so these have typically been deals where there's kind of a group participation. It's not dominated by any one investor. So let's just say the guy wants to raise, or woman wants to raise 400 grand to support their salary and maybe some interns, office space, due diligence, deal expenses, that kind of thing. So they might get 8 investors, each investing 50 grand in the search phase. Okay. So the search phase is generally in a traditional, what's called a traditional search. This is like the search method that Irv Grousbeck originated. There's kind of different flavors I'll tell you about that have developed over time. I'll tell you about at the end. But so our searcher successfully raises 400 grand. They're probably going to pay themselves a salary of 125, 150 grand, whatever. And maybe hire a few people to help them, interns or whatever. And it's generally structured so that they'll have 2 years of runway to go find a business. And the businesses they're looking for have evolved also over time, but traditionally they are characterized by a couple things. One, they're profitable, so they're generally kind of 1 to 3 million of what we would call EBITDA, which is kind of a proxy for cash flow. It's a little different than net income, but we can get into that later. The recurring revenue, meaning that the customer, the customer has a recurring commitment to the customer, to the company. You can think about that as like, well, SaaS software for sure, but someone who, buys a certain service over a period of time. And that comes in many, many different flavors. And honestly, they tend to be boring businesses that aren't that sexy, that other people are kind of overlooking. And the idea is to find a founder of one of these businesses who's kind of bootstrapped it and gotten the business to that point of profitability, kind of by force of will, without a lot of sophistication, and get to them before they really even have an idea that they're going to sell. Because what we want is for the searcher to buddy up to the owner of the business and form a relationship where the owner of the business is willing to sell to this younger entrepreneur without going through an auction process at a favorable price. And the favorable price traditionally is probably like 4 to 5 times cash flow. Businesses in general are valued based on a multiple of earnings. And here I'm talking about cash flow. It's kind of the type of earnings that we use in these kinds of business situations. And so the idea is that eventually we find a business, the searcher finds a business that they want to buy, and they have socialized that with these 8 investors. And let's just say that the business is $4 million. The purchase price they negotiate is $4 million. Just to make the math easy. So each of the 8 investors now have the right to invest 500 grand in that transaction to buy this business. It doesn't always work out that the original investors all want to play. And so sometimes there's what's called a gap, meaning that let's just say 6 of the investors each want to do 500 grand. No one really wants to go over their pro rata. And so the searcher then has this $1 million gap, and they've got to traditionally go out to other search fund investors who weren't in the original deal to fill the gap to close the deal. Okay. One part that's interesting in terms of how the mechanics work is, so in this scenario, the original investors invested 400 grand in the search portion. That equity doesn't go away. It actually rolls into the new deal on top of the 4 million, but at a stepped up basis. So the 4 at 1.5 times. So the 400 grand of original capital that was put at risk to support the guy searching now rolls into the deal as 600 grand. So in essence, there's not just the $4 million to buy the business, but 4 million plus 600 grand, so 4.6 million of capital in the business on day one. Okay. So if that all works, our search fund entrepreneur gets the keys to the castle, becomes the CEO, generally from the larger investors, builds a board of directors who advises him or her. Generally, they have no idea what they're doing, and so need a lot of help. And we'll get into kind of how they create value, how they build their team, how they bring kind of professional management to bear to basically increase that cash flow over a period of time, and then ultimately have a much more organized exit, 5 or 6 or 7 years later, where there's an auction process with a banker, so that the multiple on the exit is higher than the multiple that he or she paid at the front end. The ideal scenario is you get kind of a double effect, which is, let's say we bought the business at 4 times, and let's just say it was doing $1 million of EBITDA at the front end, so it's a $4 million asset. Let's say we grew the business from 1 million to 2 million of profitability over 5 years, and we ran a really good auction process, and we were able to not get a 4 times multiple, but get a 5 times multiple. Then the $4 million business is sold at $10 million. So we get the double in EBITDA plus the multiple expansion. That's the goal. That's how you really make this work. So there's a couple of things that are important in terms of understanding the mechanics. In terms of how the CEO, the founder, the search funder is compensated and is thinking why they're doing this. And so in a lot of financial transactions of various kinds, there's what's called a promote or kind of a profit participation. And so after that $4.6 million is paid back, and it could be that there's also a coupon on top of that, but I'll leave that up for now for simplicity. The capital that comes out of the sale of the business above that amount is the profit in the transaction, and in many different formats. The profit participation of like the management team is generally in the area of 20%. So that's the same here. So whatever the excess return above returning the capital, the CEO has the right to 20%. It gets a little more complicated than that, in that the profit participation comes in 3 flavors. Number 1, a third of it is they just get it for doing the deal. Number 2 is time vested, probably over 5 years, so that they get a fifth of it each year for being there and not getting fired. And the third is performance based. So it's based on the performance, the return generated for investors. And that third piece is where it gets super complicated. I'm not going to go into it right now, but in this whole ecosystem, I don't really know how it happened, but there's actually a formula. I was trying to sort out the fact that there was misaligned incentives in that third performance bucket, and did some math to come up with a different way to think about it, a different formula that became universally accepted. And for whatever reason, it wasn't my idea, is known as the Matlack formula. So if you go Google the Matlack formula, you'll see this very prevalent in this marketplace. Like every single deal has that term in it. So that's like what's called a traditional search. Just quickly, I don't want to kind of belabor all this. I'm going to try and keep this under 20 minutes. There are two other flavors that are quite common now. The most common is called self-funded, which Harvard Business School kind of pioneered, and it's universal, but it's still taught at Harvard Business School, and it just basically takes the first section off. So instead of raising the full 100 grand, a person just goes out and looks for a deal with no financial backing. They're just paying, they're living off their savings. And when they have a live deal, then they go to search fund investors to invest in that transactions. The terms of that, the deals are generally smaller. The equity raise is generally smaller. They're generally using a lot more leverage. And so the SBA has programs where you can very aggressively borrow money with U.S. government backing for small business transactions. And so those entrepreneurs use that SBA program very frequently. And so the equity terms are actually richer for the entrepreneur. I'm not going to go through all that right now. But those transactions are generally smaller and have a lot more leverage. If you go on searchfunder.com, which I highly recommend you do, a lot of those folks are self-funded. There's a lot of traditional guys in there and women in there too, but there's a lot of self-funded folks. And then the third model that has become popular is what's called a search fund accelerator. And that's where an investor tries to capture the whole thing, meaning that instead of having 8 investors, there's just one. And so someone invests in a pool of capital that goes out and recruits searchers, pays them a salary while they're in the accelerator. They're all trying to pool their efforts and pool the training while they're looking for individual deals. And then when they find a deal, that one investor is the sole owner of the business. And that's the original one was in Boston, and that's there's many others as well. And the economics there are slightly different as well. And also, I would say the entrepreneurial experience is different in that you don't have this kind of more diverse group of shareholders and board members where no one controls the deal per se. In the case of a search fund accelerator, the one investor controls everything, and so it does feel a little bit more like you're an employee. So that's a lot, I know. I would definitely suggest going and reading the Stanford primer. Go find the most recent Stanford study, which gives the returns. If you're really crazy, go look at my LinkedIn or Search Funder post on comparing a more recent Yale study of returns to the Stanford study. Go on searchfunder.com, just check it out, read some articles, read some comments. And then a couple of just very, very general things that you're just kind of looking to pick up business and financial lingo. 2 podcasts I would recommend. One is Prof G Markets, which is Scott Galloway's daily podcast on markets. He's only on there occasionally. It's mostly this younger guy, British guy, Ed, who's actually really, really good. So I would listen to that. There's In Good Company, which is run by a guy out of, I think, Norway, who runs their sovereign wealth fund. It's like $1 trillion fund, but he just interviews CEOs, and it's really thoughtfully done and well done. I just read the Wall Street Journal. Honestly, I don't anymore, but it's just a good way to get yourself familiarized with the business world. And I think I mentioned in one of the emails or communications around the admissions process, the first book we're going to be reading is Shoe Dog. It's a really, really fun book. It's about the founding of Nike by Phil Knight. I like listening to those kind of books, so I would recommend listening. But even if not, it's just a really fun, cool read, and will get you familiarized with at least some of what I'm talking about. that's it for today. Cody needs a walk, but I just wanted to pump this out here. I will do some more of these when the spirit moves me, but this will be the first one.